Now, when you take business being hard in general and you add another layer to that, which is working with friends and family,
things get weird.
I've heard horror stories.
You may end up not having the same relationship that you once had. Hey, welcome to the VIP Financial Ed YouTube channel. Matthew Pillmore here. I'm the president of VIP Financial Education. I'm the cash flow king, guys. I'm the one that's going to help you change exactly how you're managing your income and your expenses so that you can have as much money left over at the end of the month as you can imagine. And that is ultimately the goal here on the channel. Today, I wanted to have a conversation with Michael Mathe, who is the founder of Little Pink Houses of America, to discuss the concept of working with family and friends. And we had brought it into another episode that we did that Michael has experience in 3 separate startups, which he had teamed up with both family and friends to run and build, and a couple of them succeeded. The one he's currently running, Little Pink Houses of America, amazing business model. They're just absolutely killing it. Another one with his dad and his best friend, quite a duo. I mean, that's obviously violating
That's
a lot
the double whammy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. You're taking all the risks on that one. And then a third business with his sister that didn't actually continue. You guys fell on hard times and kind of, no fault of your own, it sounds like, but for whatever reason, economically, that business didn't succeed. So we've got a lot of history with you working with people you love. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to talk on that subject in greater length on this episode because I think this is a subject that really, really falls on a lot of ears that need to hear it. I have experience working with family. In fact, I had taken a $180,000 debt weapon from my parents at one point, which was a home equity line of credit from their property. So it was not like they're wealthy and could just simply hand over that kind of money. It required them to borrow, and we then put that money to work. So there's a lot of strings attached to that, and there are a lot of layers of concern. And I also had multiple divorces, so to speak, in business. So I just wanted to make sure that people listening, if you're considering bringing people you love into business with you, that you think about it from all angles first. So you know with total confidence that this is the right move for you, because it does not always go the way you want, right? So how did that really come to be? How did you even end up teaming up with your dad and your best friend, mm-hmm. and then your sister?
Yeah, so my sister is an entrepreneur also, and she's now in the restaurant business. They've got a lot of restaurants, mostly out on the West Coast. But before that, she was an attorney. I got really sick and tired of the long hours that are involved with that, and wanted to venture out on her own. So I've just had a pretty extensive sales background in business development at that point. This was, in my late 20s. And she just asked me if I wanted to be a part of it, helping grow the team. We actually grew.
So she came to you, mm-hmm. She was starting the business, mm-hmm. and wanted your assistance in developing.
That's correct. So I'd hired, really oversaw new business development and the sales force hiring and ultimately firing those people. And like you said, it was really more about the financial climate at the time. The business was very solvent. It was just really bad timing more than anything. So I had a great working relationship.
What year was this?
This would have been in 2006, 2007, right around there. We all know what was kind of happening.
So right before the recession.
That's right.
So the economic climate of the recession had the direct impact on
absolutely
things falling, essentially unwinding.
And it had already started.
Really?
It was in Southern California,
mm-hmm.
which really was affected a lot sooner than a lot of other mm-hmm. places around the country. So again, it had nothing to do with our personal relationship or anything detrimental like that. It was just it was all financial climate at the time.
So I'm curious now. Obviously, there's no real finger pointing in this situation when economically you guys really just weren't able to hold on. Mm-hmm. But tell me how that impacted the dynamic of the relationship. To what degree financially were each of you affected by this, by the way?
I wasn't so much. I didn't have all my eggs in that basket. I'd already started another business that is the one that I've got with my best friend and my dad. And I wouldn't say at that point it was on autopilot, but it did free me up to do some other things that I had interest in. And one of those happened to be with my sister. Did the dynamic change because of that? I couldn't unequivocally say no. I mean, business is hard.
It's really hard.
If it wasn't, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be starting their own companies. Everyone would be an entrepreneur. Now, when you take business being hard in general and you add another layer to that, which is working with friends and family, it does add an interesting dynamic to it. I've heard horror stories, and I'm sure you have as well, of partners divorcing, even husband and wives divorcing over business. And I've got one case in point that happened a couple years ago with Pink, where ultimately that's what did happen. I think just being in business together and kind of butting heads, they, I think, learned some things about each other that they probably didn't like, is kind of my understanding. But my relationship with her really didn't change because of that. Had there been some finger pointing or some faults, then maybe that would have been a different outcome. But it was a positive experience with her. I'd do it all over again.
Did you guys each have funding in the business?
We actually had outside funding on that. There were some angel investors on that deal. Mm-hmm.
Did she have any capital in?
She did, yeah.
And she lost it. She lost everything.
That's
basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, did she realize any actual financial despair from this business falling apart, or was her fallout similar to yours, where it was minimal impact and she was able to move on relatively?
Yeah, she was able to move on. She's just a high income earner in general, so she just went kind of that next shiny object, and it doesn't matter what my sister Jennifer does, she kind of turns lemons into lemonade. So it was a minor setback for her, and she went on and has done bigger and better things at this point.
So as far as interactions, did you notice any? So when things started to go work against you, were your interactions together different? Did you feel like there was more friction at any point? Were there arguments at any time in this particular experience for you?
Yeah, sure. There was definitely those things. I mean, we could kind of read the tea leaves, so it's not like it just came out of nowhere and kind of caught us off guard. So of course, when you're seeing, your baby kind of, I wouldn't say crash and burn, that's probably pretty dramatic to say, but when you can see that it's kind of going south, of course that adds another element of pressure. So it's been a number of years at this point, but I do distinctively remember some, a little bit of strife back and forth with her, because obviously we had the same interest in the business being successful, and once we realized that it was not going to, it affected our relationship at the time. I think just in the office, we were able to separate outside of that, but it affected everyone. I mean, everyone's morale obviously was being tested every single day, because we all really were cognizant of what was happening.
And you had to lay people off too, which that is really, really tough. So,
yeah.
Okay, so then fast forward to you're going into business now with your dad and your best friend. You clearly didn't learn anything from this experience with your sister, right? Or no, this was overlapped.
Yeah, it was actually overlapped.
Okay, so things were going okay, and so you're like, okay, I want to try and test my luck even more.
Right.
So you went into business with your dad and your best friend then.
Yep.
How did they end up connecting?
So they knew each other just from my relationship with Eric, of course, and he's just a sharp business mind, and the same thing with my dad. I think there was just kind of that strength in numbers type scenario. So Eric and I we started out of our house, and we were just burning the midnight oil. I mean, on 18, 20-hour days, just in the grind. Once we were at a point, and I forget what the benchmark was, we were generating a couple $100,000 a month out of our condo in Silicon Valley out in California. We wanted to scale, and how we were going to do that was we brought my dad in, obviously, got involved. He had some office space for a totally unrelated business that he had started years before that, and we were able to really leverage that and his business experience. It was just kind of, there were some natural synergies there. It was a good fit. We did a lot of shipping.
Very qualified people in these roles too, right? It's not just random, well, we're best friends, we should go into business.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an important aspect of this? So if you're contemplating building a business, is it more important to seek that friendship or family member because you have a really high quality personal interest in one another, or are you better off looking for somebody? Is it really important that that person is still qualified to be in the role that you're putting them in anyway? You can't just slap president on somebody's title.
No.
And expect that they understand what they're doing.
And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong when they're kind of considering going into these business relationships with friends and family is just because they're a friend or a family member does not qualify them to be a good business person. And I think in a lot of cases, you know, people might go in with kind of high expectations, but not having worked with them in a business capacity, I think that people can get blindsided very easily. I was in a fortunate position because both of them I have a great deal of respect for on a personal level, but they're just brilliant business minds also, just happen to be my father and happen to be my best friend. We all recognize that each one of us brought a unique skill set to the table, from a finance background or sales background or infrastructure. We all really brought things to the table that were tremendously valuable for the other people. So I think that that's really what made it unique. You can't just throw a group of people in a room that don't necessarily have those skill sets, I guess, and just expect them to thrive.
So let's talk about the Little Pink Houses of America business model, because I'm assuming that it's not uncommon where spouses are going to team up and want to really attack this business together. I would guess it's probably advantageous to have that unity, that strength in unity, and both parties of a household being on the same page with the game plan, and maybe one person is spearheading more daily tasks than another. But are you finding that it's difficult for your clients to be, you know, working alongside their spouses?
You know, I'm not at their house, so I don't really have that insider's view of it, obviously, but most of the people we do work with are husband and wife teams, or they're bringing in friends or some other family members. I think that that's great because there's definitely strength in number and strength in numbers, just having that distribution of labor in the business, because there are many facets to it. Now, you can do it on your own, and we've got people like Mona that are out there successful on their own, but her desire is not to scale. If she does a handful of deals or a deal a month, that's all she's looking for. People that are looking to scale, which we're getting a lot more and more of that now, where people are bringing in, you know, a team of at least a husband and wife, or they've got other friends and family that are getting involved in it. It's been working out really well from a business standpoint, but there's definitely some grumblings behind the scenes that we hear about sometimes.
How do you protect, you know, the overachiever from the underachiever? How do you define workload? How do you remove somebody that you love from their position? You know, I find that's probably the most complicated aspect of working with family and friends, is when things aren't going smoothly, you have to have checks and balances in place. You have to have a process there, and I think expectations have to be set well in advance, right? I mean, defining the role and the position profile in order to make sure that everybody is living up to, you know, their personal responsibilities is probably a pretty major aspect of this, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things we get into when they do come in town for the training. So whoever's going to be involved in their day-to-day operation, whether it's spouse, friends, family, you know, whatever relationship they've got with these people, do come in town for it. And we do spend a segment of the training talking about kind of that distribution of labor. And I talked about Jim Collins' book earlier today, you know, Good to Great, and that's what we referenced during that. You know, this is your team right here, and throughout that week we can really get a good sense and a feel for what maybe their strong suits and what their weaknesses may be, and before they leave we've got it really mapped out. You know, maybe this individual is better with the marketing and the back end, this person's better working with buyers, or they happen to be working better working with sellers. I think the key is that everyone is going in eyes wide open. You know, we're laying out what their key responsibility areas are, so they're never having to wonder what they're supposed to be doing from one day to the next. I think and the accountability piece is huge. You know, making sure that, you know, they are keeping their eyes on that specific part of the business that they're responsible for, and holding each other accountable. And that's a lot of what we provide also through our coaching and our ongoing support to these individuals, is making sure that people are staying in their lane.
And so I guess what I would be seeking before I went into business again with somebody else, anybody for that matter, is defining the roles and daily tasks and really clearly within the contract, because there needs to be a partnership agreement.
Sure, absolutely.
And I don't know to what extent this applies within a marriage. And so I think there are layers of complication. because obviously the entire household and the betterment of that, it depends on the success of the business and the marriage succeeding in business together, right? And so my personal experience is less with family and friends and more with business partnerships, and I've seen what can happen. My earliest experience with that was one of the original founders of VIP was one of my very first mentors and played a tremendous role in my life. We went into business together very early on, and truly about 6 months after I had my first education within real estate that we started VIP, and 10 years later, he's ready to exit. I mean, he's putting in 120-hour weeks. He decides to go back to school for his MBA, his executive MBA. He's got 3 kids under 10. His wife had enough. And so we had this outside influence coming, every night to him saying, enough is enough, and I'm not going to allow this anymore. You need to make a decision. Well, he decided he wanted to continue with the school and decided to go out and get a normal job because the hours committed to what we were doing were tremendous. We were putting in, easily 80-hour weeks with VIP. And so he decided to exit. And while it remained very cordial because we had become best friends, when you're in business with somebody, it very much is like a romantic marriage. You're seeing that person more often than you're generally seeing your loved ones at home. Yeah. And so he and I, very much were joined at the hips, and it got a little weird at the end, even while we stayed friends. He all of a sudden didn't exactly see eye to eye with what we were saying should happen with the exit. He thought he should still be in some way leaving with interest, even though he was deciding to take off, and we felt like he should basically just relinquish control. And it wasn't that anybody was right or wrong, but we definitely had to refer back to the specific line items inside our partnership agreement in order to reach resolution. And frankly, it really almost came down to a legal discrepancy. And that was a bit heartbreaking for me because we were so close. So it was tough. It wasn't an easy experience at all, but it opened my eyes to, wow, this is so much more than just being excited about a business together and saying, let's do it. When things are great, there's never a worry. But when things aren't going as you initially think they will, which is, all unicorns and rainbows, you better have a document that's well written in place that you had drafted and executed before things get weird. So that would be my biggest recommendation and takeaway from this video is, regardless of who you're going into business with, and especially when it's a family member or a good friend, you've got to make sure you spell things out. Acknowledge the fact that there could be an unwanted consequence to going into business together. You may end up not having the same relationship that you once had. And so it has to be worth it. It has to be worth it for you to still pursue it. And so, I think that's why they usually discourage going into business with family and friends, because I've had other partnerships that didn't work out well, and we're not on speaking terms. And thankfully it wasn't a family member or a friend. Now, when it came to the debt weapon that I actually leveraged from my parents, that was terrifying to approach them about it. I was confident in what I would be able to do with it, and yet I knew that there was this risk. But my parents at the time were very forthcoming in that if something went sideways with this, they were going to be forgiving, and it was not going to ruin our relationship. They literally came to me and verbalized that. And I think that took a bit of the pressure off, but I also, for the entire length of time we utilized this to grow a quite significant revenue stream, I felt a massive stress over it. And it wouldn't necessarily be something that I would encourage other people to pursue, which is why I'm so adamant about teaching people on this channel how they can use the banks and other types of lenders to access capital in order to build wealth, to get into projects like Little Pink Houses and make big money every single month. But I would definitely discourage folks, even though it worked out well in my case. I still look back now, even after the debt has been completely paid in full, and sort of think that it was a mistake. And it worked out beautifully. It went exactly as we hoped it would. And my parents have been made whole, and they need that money for their retirement. My dad retired last year. They need that money. So I was so blessed to be able to get it back to them. But had it gone wrong, I just think about that sometimes, and and it makes me almost nauseous, kind of like, just feels like I'm walking on a tightrope just thinking about it. It's like just terrifying if it hadn't gone right. So please avoid borrowing from your family. Going into business requires a lot of upfront conversation and a lot of agreements to be made and an exit strategy to be in place in any possible scenario. Maybe one partner wants to maintain an active status and one partner wants to remove themselves, similar to my partnership. If that's the case, you better have something in writing that defines how that goes, so that everybody's expectations are being met and nobody feels as if they've been slighted.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, just having that operators or partnership agreement in place. And people may say, well, they're my best friend, or, you know, it's my family member. I mean, that's even all the more reason to put those in place to safeguard against things like that. You never know how someone's going to react until they react, right? Especially if it's a first-time basis, like doing business with someone. When you've got it clearly defined there, that you can both go back and take a look at that document that really governs the business and the relationship itself, it can take the onus off of someone just making a decision that the other person's not going to like. And then I think just having that open dialogue, hey, what does success look like for you? And we always ask the new people that come on board with us, we want to know that up front. You know, if they've got this delusions of grandeur, but they're only willing to work, you know, part-time, well, we're going to set them straight. We're going to, you know, give them expectations based on the amount of effort that they're going to do. I think same thing with your business partners. You know, what does it look like for you in 1 year? What does 3 years down the road look like? What does 5 years down the road look like? What does an exit strategy look like for you? You know, how much time are you going to put into this? You know, I think that those are all very relevant questions that you want to vet out, you know, prior to moving forward. And I think it's part of the decision-making process. It's not, hey, we're going into business together, now let's figure out the rest. You know, I think just having that, those honest, real, raw conversations prior to making that final decision, I think is key.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, guys, that when you leverage to build a business, it is almost always going to require personal guarantees. So you also have to start to factor in, you know, the quality of somebody's borrowing strength and who's taking on certain points of leverage, and be sure to check out the video that we did regarding credit card accounts and not using your personal credit cards to fund your businesses, because that is something we see happen all the time. Now guys, if you're interested in finding out more about Little Pink House's business opportunity, make sure you check the link in the description below. I'm going to go ahead and put a link to a video that Michael and I did where I interviewed them about Little Pink Houses of America. Great way to side hustle yourself into 15 or even 30 and even $45,000 extra every month. Had two amazing conversations with Little Pink Houses of America affiliates today that came in straight from this channel, just like you, who are already out crushing it. And they found out about it the exact same way that you are right now. So check the link for answers to your questions. Make sure you watch the videos all the way through. Very important to get all your questions answered, and then go ahead and email pink@vipfinancialeducation.com, pink as in the color, at financialeducation.com, and set up your discovery call, which is just a soft conversation regarding the business model and whether or not your specific needs can be met by participating. But nobody's going to be strong-arming you. Nobody's going to be trying to hard sell you on anything. If you're a fit, wonderful. You can make amazing money, and it'll be well worth the investment. If you're not a fit, then you guys will just part company as friends, just like we do on our side. So make sure you check out those videos in the description below. If you're not yet a subscriber, be sure to join. And until we see you on the next video, I'm looking forward to you guys' success in the near future. So make it a great day today, and take care.
What are your last couple deals? Let's go ahead and add them up. I've got the calculator in front of me right now.
Well, the last two deals were both FSBO flips. One of them was $38,000, and the other one was $27,000. I didn't expect that. It was unusual, but that was how it happened to be, because there were houses that was difficult for the realtors, and the realtors have tried it and couldn't make it work.
So between the two deals, yeah, $65,000 on those two. So a 38 and a 27, correct?
38 and 27.
And it cost you how much?
It only cost me, for one of the transactions, it cost me a transaction, a transaction loan that cost me $2,000, and then $1,500 for a legal fee. So that was $3,500 in all.
Got it. So just net, basically, I mean, you're still north of 60
yes.
on those two deals?
Yes.
Oh.
And I'm very humbled by it.
Are you upset?
No, no. I'm very humbled by it because I didn't expect it. Come on, we don't expect it. If I could get 10, 15, 5, I'll grab it any day for a fistbowl flip, right? It just so happened that circumstances are, and we learn to articulate the best for all parties. In the end, nobody questions me how much I make or is unhappy because they're happy with what they're getting. You know,
Yeah,
so
sure.